Okay, it is 3 p.m. Geneva time, and I'm excited to get going on this masterclass. Until this point, if you've seen our previous classes, or if not, we have them on YouTube. We have covered some of the legal basics about setting up a DAO. And again, that's a general principle on what a good legal foundation should be for establishing a DAO, what jurisdictions apply, and what are some of the elements that can kind of drive success. One of the things we mentioned in that is that a key success driver for DAOs is to establish community. So we did our second masterclass on how to drive community engagement and participation on a DAO. And this third one is meant to be a very practical presentation on how you can just actually get a DAO going on Cardano. And we will be sharing a video that was put together by the founder of Clarity DAO, which is a almost no-code solution for creating DAOs on Cardano. Please do feel free to stop me at any point during the presentation and ask questions or drop them in the chat. I will try to treat them as we come. We also will be hanging all these videos on our YouTube channel, which is Decentral House, DECENTRAL space HOUSE. And we're always open to answering questions. Again, like I was telling one of the attendees earlier, the point is to get the knowledge out to the community and to help more people be able to cross the gap from spectator to participant in the Cardano community. So in terms of launching a DAO on Cardano, here are a few of the points that we're going to be talking about. We're going to talk about, again, what is a DAO at its essence. We'll talk about when you should use a DAO. I think there are plenty of organizations out there that call themselves DAOs and are really just a Telegram channel or a WhatsApp group with polls, which can function like a DAO, but doesn't have some of the protections and functions and trustlessness of a DAO. We'll talk about when not to use a DAO, because I think sometimes people can use a DAO because it's a really nifty idea, but maybe it's not appropriate for all situations. We'll talk about why Cardano might be a good place to establish a DAO. We'll go through practical implementation considerations, and then we'll watch a video prepared for us by Clarity. Throughout, we'll talk about a couple examples of DAOs that are either on Cardano or not, and how things have gone with them, what the attributes or aspects of those DAOs is. And that will take us through the next hour or so. So what is a DAO? And again, not necessarily knowing who the eventual audience is going to be of these videos, we try to define anything, but if I don't define something, please do stop me. A DAO is a decentralized autonomous organization. Just inherent into the name, we understand that it is not supposed to be centralized, that it is supposed to be able to be self-running, where the processes of the DAO itself allow the sustainable activity of the DAO. And then it's an organization. It is a group of people that is trying to do, or a group of systems even, trying to do something. I do think that's an important characterization, that last bit, that a DAO should do something ultimately, or else it's really just a chat group. The primary use is to automate and progressively decentralize decision-making processes. I do think that a DAO doesn't have to be black or white. So you can start with something that is more centralized at the beginning when you have a core group of people who want to achieve something. And that thing can evolve over time. And in fact, it can be very important to have mechanisms in place that allow a DAO to evolve, especially as the world around it or the field in which the purpose is to be accomplished changes. Now, there are a few processes that are pretty standard to most DAOs. They have to be able to onboard and offboard members. That can be really important because if new members can't be brought in and the attendance stagnates, or if when people are brought in, they don't understand how to participate in the DAO, you can find yourself in a situation where the membership is shrinking, and eventually becomes inactive. You need to be able to collect voting items and polls. Typically, in DAO parlance, the difference between a poll and a voting item is that a poll is a way to collect community opinion without triggering a decision, whereas a voting item is usually a decision, something that will be acted on by the mechanisms of the DAO. Once you have collected and reported votes, you usually need to put those into action somehow, which is why some DAOs will have treasuries which will allocate things as part of the proposals. You will want to incentivize participation in activities. Again, there's several ways that a DAO can fail, and one of them is simply by the complete lack of interest or participation by the community. So it's important, as in all Web3 applications, to make sure that whatever the desired behavior of the users is, that you are somehow rewarding that activity. And it doesn't necessarily need to be with something with tangible value. It can just be points or street cred or visibility on some decisions, but something should be in place. And then again, if the DAO doesn't do anything, you're mostly just collecting opinions. So it can be important to have some sort of financial or systematic consequence for the decisions that are made by the DAO. And a great DAO is going to make these processes transparent, efficient, and decentralized. But that is not always what the purpose may require. So that's something that we should kind of take a look at. I'm going to take this as an aside, and it's a decision-making process called an OODA loop. And an OODA loop is something that was come up with by jet fighter pilots during the Cold War. And the idea behind it was simple. It was that in high stress, high speed, low opportunity for error situations, the faster you could act and make the right decision, the more likely you were to survive. And so in these types of situations, for example, when a hawk is about to snatch a mouse, the ability to observe quickly, right? For the hawk to see the mouse or the mouse to realize it is about to be eaten by a hawk. The ability to orient, to understand your situation. So is the hawk moving towards the mouse in a way that is going to be able to catch it? Or for the mouse, will the hawk catch me? To decide, should the hawk reorient or go faster or slow down because it's going to hit the ground, or the mouse. Usually there's only two decisions. There's run or stay still, and then act, the actual movement of wings or claws, and then the mouse exerting energy to either hide or run away or turn. And in situations where OODA loops are necessary, usually you go through that cycle over and over again, right? You observe, orient, decide, act, observe, orient, decide, act. And the same is true in soccer, the same is true for day traders, the same is true when you're trying to debug something important while keeping things up. And so if you can't get through that cycle fast enough, usually something bad will happen to you. And that's really relevant when you're designing a DAO, because remember when we said that a DAO had to have a purpose, and it usually you should only have that purpose be executed by a DAO if a DAO is going to make it through the OODA loop faster in the way that you have chosen to go through. So that brings us to when you should actually use a DAO. A DAO should be used when you have shared resources across multiple people that need to be allocated where there's very little trust involved or where there should not be trust. If you have a single founder who is bringing in all the funds to a startup, and they are the sole proprietor of that startup, and they're going to make all the decisions, it doesn't really necessarily make sense to use a DAO unless they want to be very democratic about their approach and they believe strongly from a deep philosophical basis that those resources belong to everyone. However, if a group of 3 co-founders come together and they are each contributing equal resources or time or talent, a DAO might be appropriate, especially if they don't know each other, because they want to make sure that the allocation of those resources is done in a way that is systematic and that cannot just be driven by one person. And obviously, you could do that with traditional governance methods or an agreement or a contract. And for just 3 people, maybe that would be a little bit of a trivial application. But imagine you have a business that is employee owned. So when you become an employee, you acquire shares, and they have 100 members or 1,000 members, or they have 10,000 members spread across every continent in the world. Then a DAO would be a way for all those co-owners of value to be able to make group decisions in a way that would be more efficient than, for example, someone picking up the phone and trying to call them. And it would be less subject to strong personalities or even other forms of coercion taking over the system. So again, shared resources, very little trust. It's appropriate to use a DAO when there are strong incentives for participation for all members. So imagine if you set up a DAO, which again is more complicated than just making your own decisions about money than on your own, and it's more complicated than just turning to your friends. So imagine if you were running a family business, for example, and the whole family was kind of aligned on what they wanted to do and they trusted each other. A DAO probably isn't the right mechanism. But conversely, if you have that decentralized system where you need people, but let's say half the group is very interested in the outcome of the questions that are being put to the DAO. What would be a good example of that? A good example would be, for example, let's say that you have a DAO that's made of 500 train conductors and 500 airplane pilots. And the DAO only deals with issues that involve trains. Under those circumstances, it is highly likely that the train conductors will participate or vote in the decisions involving trains, and the pilots, maybe at first out of interest or because they made a commitment, they would participate, but over time, the participation of the pilots would decrease. You could also have a situation where, let's say, the pilots were concerned that trains were taking on more and more traffic from airlines and that they were all going to be out of jobs. They might make decisions that were counter to the interests of train conductors under the same circumstances and even nonsensical. So it's really important when you create your DAO and your DAO has a purpose that the members of that DAO are somehow aligned to that purpose and have the right incentives so that the purpose will be accomplished. We talked about when complex governance is needed to ensure fair or high quality decisions. Let's go back to that family business, right? And on a day-to-day basis, everyone likes each other and everyone gets along. It's cousins working with cousins and brothers and sisters, and everyone trusts each other. And then one day, so that doesn't make sense to use a DAO. And then one day, the patriarch or the matriarch of the family, whoever was the strongest personality in the family, dies. And so there's the funeral and everyone's sad. And then they come into work the next day and they say, okay, who should be the new patriarch or matriarch? And suddenly you are in a complex governance situation where there may no longer be the alignment there was before. And I think it can be really important in a DAO, which can allow you to systematically take these complex decisions under certain circumstances, to have triggers that allow you to deal with these levels of complexity. When, for example, you have a change in the makeup of the group, or when, for example, you might have a sub-faction within the members of a DAO who are suddenly not aligned with the general principle of the DAO. And in fact, one of the case studies that we'll get into will touch on exactly that. And so in those situations where you need high quality documented decisions, where people need to express opinions on things that maybe were never treated before, you might want special provisions to come in, such as observers, such as quorums of numbers of people who have to participate into moving a decision forward. But again, they should take the previous two things into account. They shouldn't be used in situations where it would be easier and more effective to just make the decision the traditional way. And they should only be used when there are strong incentives for all the participating members to participate in the decision in a way that kind of aligns with the purpose of the DAO. Similarly, a DAO should, unless you're running an experiment for a school or something like that, a DAO should mostly be used for important decisions. It can be easy for people to think that because it's techie and because it's new that we should just use it for trivial things, but that's actually not sensical, because if you use a DAO, which is a costly or more costly way of making a decision than just making a decision, on trivial things that have very little value, you're automatically costing more than the decision was worth. But if you use a DAO that is well structured, that has been thought out properly to make a decision that has a high value, then the cost of using the DAO is much smaller than the reward of the decision. And the last thing, the last reason you should really use a DAO is when inclusion, so the ability to include people into a decision is more important than the outcome. So that everyone feels like they were heard, like everyone feels like they had a say and they were able to vote. Going back to that situation where it might be a succession issue or a family issue, where you don't want to have the perception of a select group driving a choice that should belong to everyone, that might be a very good reason why you should use a DAO. And then again, I think I mentioned it earlier, but this doesn't have to be an all or nothing situation. You can have hybrid models. You don't have to be a DAO maxi on your governance. You can delegate decisions to a DAO that need to fit within the parameters above, or vice versa. A DAO can delegate the fulfillment of a certain action that needs to be more similar to that hawk and mouse situation where you need to make fast decisions. You could delegate that situation to a particular group that within that narrow scope will do a particular action within guardrails. And that's usually the basis of most effective DAO actions. So again, just getting back to it, you don't use a DAO when speed is the most important factor, because a DAO usually has to go through a process of proposing an idea, voting on an idea, and then implementing the idea somehow. You don't want to get into a DAO when expertise is concentrated or absent. Now let's go back to our family-owned business scenario. I think that's a really good one. Let's say maybe you have 100 members of a family globally, And then that includes children, it includes very old people, and it includes people who work in the business and people who have never worked in the business. Usually, you wouldn't want to use the whole family DAO to make a decision that required specific expertise that's tied to the business. So under those circumstances, if there was a DAO in place to kind of manage the family wealth, maybe the DAO would delegate to the 10 members of the family who actively work in the business to make the decision, or at least to propose the decision to be voted on by the group. Or they might decide that there's too much bias and that an external party should review the decision and propose it to the group where everyone can vote. You shouldn't use a DAO when there are many decisions and they're all low value. Again, think about those members and the process of submitting something to vote and then voting on it. You're costing people their time and their attention. And so the more decisions you make with the lower value, the lower the return on your time that DAO has. You should not use a DAO when accountability for outcomes is key. The side effect of the DAO, which is both good for the members of the DAO and also bad for the members of the DAO, is that since we all voted on it, no one is at fault if it doesn't work. And you shouldn't use a DAO when a key stakeholder cannot or will not participate through the actions of the DAO. All right. Here's a first case study, which is Liqwid Finance. And I like to use this one in the context of launching a DAO on Cardano, because you can find projects in the Catalyst funding program by Liqwid Finance dating all the way back to Fund 2. And so Liqwid Finance is a lending protocol on Cardano, and you can look it up. You can just go to https liquid.finance. And this is not an endorsement. Do your own research as in all Web3 things, but it's kind of cool to see how this project has evolved with Cardano since the very early days. They were funded by the Catalyst Innovation Fund, starting with Fund 2 in a project called Liqwid Cardano DeFi Lending Markets. And this is really a decentralized lending protocol. So if you'd like to know more about what that is, we have a course on Web3 financing tools for startups that we will be teaching next week. In Liqwid, users can lend different types of tokens. So they can be ADA, they can be DAI, they can be any number of things in exchange for Q tokens. And they receive both interest and staking rewards off placing those tokens to be lent. They also have an NFT collection. So Liqwid has minted or has issued an NFT collections that users can own. And then if they stake that NFT, you can get more or less rewards depending on the rarity of the NFT that you minted. If I remember well, it's you either get 5%, 8%, or 10% more rewards for having one of these NFTs. The governance of Liqwid Finance is actually done in a decentralized way. So it's done through the Liqwid DAO by staking LQ tokens. So you have Q tokens, which are received for being a user or actually a lender within the Liqwid Finance system. And then you have LQ tokens, which you can also purchase, which allow you to participate in the governance of Liqwid Finance. And things that they vote on are, for example, what are the rewards that you would get for staking LQ tokens for a certain period of time? And what are the interest rates and what are the assets that are allowed to participate in the protocol. So I recommend you take a look at it. It's liquid.finance. And again, it was started on Cardano using ecosystem grants from the Catalyst Innovation Fund. The second case study we'll take a look at is actually a DEX. So it's a decentralized exchange that is also on Cardano that's called SundaeSwap. They were not funded by grants. They were actually launched in the Cardano community through an initial stake pool offering, which is a little bit like an initial farm offering. And so the community actually, without going through a grant mechanism, funded the launch of Sundae, which was built by Sundae Labs. And they received the Sundae token as rewards for their stake pool participation and for other actions within the protocol. The Sundae token is used to govern SundaeSwap. So while SundaeSwap was originally built by Sundae Labs, they actually don't control that protocol anymore. It's run by the DAO. And you can actually look on Sundae Labs' website at their terms and conditions, and they will tell you that they are not legally responsible for the operations of SundaeSwap, although of course they've built it. And so that goes into one of the other purposes of the DAO that was also covered in our legal webinar, which is that a DAO as a decentralized entity can provide the same legal protection to the people who create it as a limited liability company. And that can be really important when you're dealing with money, because you don't want to be personally liable for something that has either been taken out of your hands or that you've placed out of your hands. Let's see, we've talked about that. The DEXs run same as Liqwid Finance. The parameters and the variables that are used to run SundaeSwap are voted on by the DAO. But there's one other reason why I chose these two case studies that I find interesting from a governance standpoint. And we'll see that in the next slide. But if you want to check out SundaeSwap, you can go to https://app.sundae.fi and check them out. This is why I chose these two case studies. So Sundae and Liqwid are actually collaborating as DAOs. And so the way they've done that is that SundaeSwap lists the LQ governance token, among others, on their DEX. So if you want to participate in the governance of Liqwid Finance, you can buy their governance token on SundaeSwap. Liqwid, as part of their lending protocol, provides liquidity to, I'm just going to turn this off. Provides liquidity pools to SundaeSwap. So, and again, we get into that in our finance webinar. How do liquidity pools and yield farming and liquidity mining work? And then SundaeSwap also decided to adopt Liqwid DAO's governance model. So they each have their own independent tokens, but they're using the same model of governance, the same rules. And so it's kind of cool that these two DAOs, which are decentralized organizations with different memberships and different tokens, have managed to kind of conclude a very complicated and interlaced collaboration, if not partnership, without any kind of central authority behind it. Now, I'm sure that the founders probably participated, and the fact that they both kind of came up on Cardano around the same time has a lot to do with that. In fact, the timing of their collaboration coincides with the ability to put smart contracts on Cardano. So these were all members of an ecosystem operating a cohort. But it's also a really neat example of what we were talking about before, in that DAO memberships should be focused on the people who have the most incentive for the specific topics that they're in, and that you can tailor and hybridize these models in ways that can be really neat and allow you to deal with complex situations. Any questions on those? Okay, cool. So why Cardano? I think one of the things that a lot of people will tell you if you tell them you're building on Cardano or that you're thinking of building on Cardano is that it has a smaller community. So if I look at the general Catalyst Discord channel, for example, it has about 4,000 members. And there are probably around 20,000 to 30,000 people involved in Cardano overall. It does have a kind of a very slow and deliberate growth model that has lots of checks and balances in it. And there's a particular attention to how things are done in Cardano that might be dealt with in a little bit of a faster way or a riskier way in other ecosystems. There is a learning curve. I think finding your way around the Cardano system, figuring out who the players are, where you can reach them, and even the language that's used as a basis for programming can be a little bit of an impediment. And they are not necessarily connected to the most mainstream projects, although there is some interoperability, and more are in development. But there are also some very big pros that you should consider, particularly in the topics of launching DAOs. And the first and foremost is that the community as a whole is very supportive and friendly. If you get the chance to go to a Cardano event, you will find that most of the people there are generally pretty excited about how the Cardano ecosystem is developing. They are showing up. They are trying to find better ways to do things. There's a general vibe of trying to do things and acknowledging that things may not always work, but that things will move forward. And I think I've personally had a lot of great interactions with people who, when I ask questions of how to do things, how would we go about that? So they're very supportive and friendly in general. They do have an emphasis on decentralized governance, and it's not just lip service. I think even at the highest levels of the foundation or within the community, whether they're small participants or large participants, there is this attention to the idea that Cardano is supposed to be decentralized and therefore has to follow certain tenets when it comes to decision making and structures, and making sure that that ecosystem is protected from kind of malign influence or negative influence. The language, which the main language is called Haskell, and Plutus is the Cardano specific way of executing smart contracts in Haskell on Cardano. It is a declarative language, which is actually less error prone when you're dealing with blockchain issues, specifically when it comes to dealing with the simultaneous and decentralized execution of code. Haskell is actually a better fit. And in fact, a lot of things on Cardano are the way they are a little bit more deliberate, are a little bit more focused, because there was a kind of a deep academic approach to how the system would be implemented. And one of the things that I've heard about Cardano in particular, from someone who's had experience with them for a long time, is that while Cardano might not move necessarily as fast or as big as someone like Solana, every time they have said they would do something, they have single-mindedly and gradually done that thing. So if what you're looking for is a collaborative community, a community that is staying fairly constant, that is doing what it says it's going to do and growing steadily and securely without exposing itself to unnecessary risk, Cardano is a really good place to be. It is currently interoperable with Ethereum and Cosmos, and more ways to bridge the gap between chains are going, not just through formal bridges, but also through projects on Cardano that themselves are multi-chain. And then, of course, there is the Catalyst Innovation Funding System, which has distributed, I think, close to the equivalent of $25 million 2 times this year, and will most likely do at least one more round by the end of the year. And that is actually a great way for people who want to build cool things in this type of community to get launched. Like we said, that's how Liqwid Finance got their start. And so if you're willing to learn the system and you're willing to understand what the ways to progress are, then it can be a really great place to be. So solving the Haskell learning curve problem, it really depends on your mindset. Most programmers that I know will tell you that learning never stops. And there are actually, as a result of the Catalyst system, a number of resources where someone can learn how to code in Haskell at no cost. So if you would rather do this yourself and do your own implementation, I would absolutely recommend it, and we're happy to steer you in the direction of where you would be able to build something on your own. As a kind of an intermediate step, I also mentioned the Summon platform, which provides primitives and other tooling for people who want to build their own DAOs. And again, if you have that bent, there are definitely resources out there for you to be able to do that. There are also specialized development agencies on Cardano that can help you by either just building it out for you or helping you on the Haskell specific or Cardano specific sections of building on Cardano. But the thing that was kind of most wide-reaching and easiest to introduce to everyone, I thought, is a no-code or low-code solution that exists on Cardano. It's called Clarity DAO, which I posted the link at the beginning of the lecture, but you can look at clarity.community and get access to it. It was founded in 2016, and the goal of the DApp is to allow the creation of a DAO on Cardano in minutes. I myself watched the founder put a DAO through most of the required elements in under 5. It does allow for off-chain polling. It does allow for on-chain decision making or voting. It allows for community management and rewards like quests and the like. And there's really no coding required. There's a little bit of knowledge that you'll need in order to look at the different types of smart contracts. But in general, it's fairly approachable. And so what we did is we talked to the founder. Again, it's a super friendly community. And we asked him to prepare something that would kind of give a guided demo of what it looks like to do it. And this is what I'll show you now.
Hello, everybody. My name is Logan, and today I'm going to be showing you how easy it is to build a DAO on Cardano with Clarity. Excited to chat with you about this today. So that's what Clarity is. It's DAO infrastructure for Cardano. It also does a lot of off-chain community management, which I'll get into as well, which is a big part of operating a DAO. So really the problem that we're looking at and solving is that, these projects, these organizations that want to implement a DAO structure to engage their and incentivize and reward their communities, these DeFi protocols, they all want to operate as DAOs, but the infrastructure is lacking. Typically, if in Cardano you want to create a DAO, you have to find smart contract developers, hundreds of $1,000s to develop it, then get the code audited as well. So Clarity solves all this for you by creating a platform and a protocol that makes it simple, fast, and affordable to create and manage and participate in a DAO without having to have any technical knowledge. So what I'm going to jump into is a live demo here, and we are going to look at, what it looks like to create a community, what it looks like to create a treasury. Then we'll jump into membership and quests, and dive into governance as well. So let's take a look here. Here we are. This is the Clarity platform. You can see there's all these different communities that leverage it. And the first big part is creating an organization. So really, to create an organization, it's really simply filling out online forms. So you put in the name of your organization, you put in the description of your organization, you can put in the logo, the links, all that good stuff, and then you get to choose how decentralized your organization is. We're creating the snapshot governance infrastructure here. I'll show you how to create the on-chain infrastructure where you actually have a smart contract treasury with automatically executing proposals next. So you can choose, okay, what members can create a governance action? Do they need to have 4 voting power? Do they need to have 400? You can make it whatever, or you can limit it to only admins. Starting centralized is often sometimes the most sensible way to go. And then you have this other check where you can require admins to approve a poll before it goes live if you do open it up to the community. Then the last thing you do is you can choose your snapshot governance assets. So you can choose really any asset. You can say 1 token, 1 vote, 1 token, 5 votes, whatever you want. You can have multiple governance actions, and then you can choose whether it's on a linear, quadratic scale. And then so that creates your snapshot organization. So to create an Agora DAO, this is a DAO that has a treasury with automatically executing proposals. And really, you just fill out this online form. And the cool part about this is when you fill out this online form, you're creating a custom instance of a completely open source and audited smart contract treasury and governance management system. So you choose your token that you want to create, and then you choose the token that you want to use as the governance token. And then you can choose, okay, if something is to execute, how much of this token needs to vote yes in order to pass the proposal? And then you can choose, okay, if you want to create a proposal in this DAO, how much of this token do you need to have staked to the organization? If you want to vote, how much do you need to have? And then the last thing you do is you get to choose, how long is the draft period, how long is the voting period, et cetera, et cetera. You sign a few transactions, and boom, you have your on-chain organization created. And this layers on top of the governance, the snapshot governance organization as well. So we use this internally at Clarity. So I'll kind of show you how we use it and all the features and stuff. So here we created our DAO. You can see our on-chain governance settings. How much does it take to create a proposal? How much does it take to execute? What does the proposal pipeline, the timing look like? You can see all the other settings involved with it. You can see the treasury, what's in the treasury, the assets, and then you're also able to look at all of the different governance actions that are happening. So there's a DAO own liquidity transition happening. And if you want to create a governance action, depending on the type you want to create, you can choose poll, bounty, proposals. So a poll is like a temperature check. It's mostly off-chain. The voting power can be derived from on-chain assets, but it doesn't have to be. And yeah, you really just click it. You can say, if we want to donate to charity, you can do this. People can vote yes, no. You can change the options as well. Then you choose when the voting opens, when the voting closes, and then you really just sign a message, and you're able to create this this type of proposal. Now, if you want to have a on-chain proposal that automatically executes, say we want to spend treasury funds to donate to charity, you can choose the spend treasury funds template. You can come in here, you can put in a description, and then you choose, okay, what asset do you want to send out and donate to the charity? All right, how much of this asset do we want to send out? And then the recipient, which address does it get sent to if this proposal passes? Then you sign a transaction. It sends that proposal to the community to vote on. And if it reaches this execution threshold up here, it automatically executes. Now, there's other things that the Clarity platform does, and I'm going to go quickly through them because I don't want this to be too long, but membership is one of them. So admins of organizations are able to create flows of what it means to actually be a member in the DAO. You get a big list of all your members here. You get to have a leaderboard of the members who contributed the most, and we'll talk about these diamonds soon. These are like off-chain DAO tokens. So as an admin, I can say, oh, you need to hold one of the tokens, you need to verify your email, you need to sign a document, whatever it may be. And that can be kind of the threshold for actually being a member. So the next thing is quests, and this is all about community engagement, community incentivization, and community rewards. So here, what we have is you can create different types of boards. All right, you can create a quest board or a raid board. A quest board is something that's always there, and members can complete these tasks one time. So you scroll down here, we have a content creation board. So if you create a thread about Clarity on X, you get 500 diamonds. If you turn on the Clarity notifications, you get 100 diamonds, these types of things. Then we have an onboarding board where, okay, you're new to Clarity, you want to come in and you want to, get in touch with the community and be plugged in. You can follow us on Twitter for all these different points and stuff. Now you can also create a raid. So as you can see, we have a raid going. The top 5 contributors to this raid will get free Clarity merch. And what users can do is they can come into the raid, they can see all these different things that they can do in order to get points within the raid. And then you can see who is kind of the leaders of the raid. So you can come in here, complete it, and as the admin, you get to approve it as well. Once you receive these points, and by the way, we use diamonds. Any DAO can use, any image as their thing. It can be, if you're like Goki, a real estate thing, you can use keys, whatever it is. And then you can come to the rewards tab as a user and you can redeem for NFTs, you can redeem for free merch, you can redeem for other tokens, you can redeem for experiences, really whatever. And as the admin, you get to come in here and you're able to see if anything has flown in, has come in. You can create new incentives within the thing. So say you want to retweet this tweet, we'll give 20 points for it, put in a description. We can put a deadline for it. And then we have automatically approved things with social integration. So if I want to automatically approve this retweet, I can say this Twitter action is a retweet, and you can choose which tweet you want to be retweeted, and then you click add. But yeah, that's pretty much it. The last thing is when you create a DAO, you automatically get a staking portal. So people can stake to the DAO and get governance power in the DAO. But yeah, that's pretty much it. It's super easy to create a DAO on Cardano now, and not only create a DAO, but manage your community, incentivize your community, reward your community, manage your community, and all these different things that go hand in hand with operating and creating a DAO. So thank you guys very much. Talk to you soon.
And so that was Logan from Clarity, and I always get a kick out of watching him present because he talks about doing some nifty and complicated things in a really, really simple way. You can find this video online. I do believe, if not, you'll see it again in mine. But the things to take away from it are he went through that stunningly quickly, right? But that ultimately a DAO is used to make systematic decisions. That it's really important to find incentives for people to do the things that are needed for the DAO to flourish. So when you think of what is someone doing by retweeting a post by the DAO, for example, you're usually saying, how are we recruiting more people, or how are we sharing information about what the DAO is trying to do, right? And so these are all things that in a traditional organization would be covered by a salary or some other form of incentive. And in here, they're being dealt with by either the allocation of treasury funds. So you're, as a member of the community, you are directly choosing to deploy the capital of the organization. Or you are doing it through internal points and incentives, which can be just as powerful for people. But regardless, you need to give people solid reasons why they should participate. And I think the biggest mistake you can make in any business is to think that something should just automatically work out some way or not. Did have one of the members of the audience say that they were looking to get involved in Cardano. I think Clarity is not just a really great tool if you want to get going quickly, but they also are kind of a center point for lots of different DAOs on Cardano. So if you're looking for a place to start, that's probably a good one. Nope. I'll try and start it again. Just trying to go to the next slide. There we go. What are the things that are missing from that video? Again, I think you need to make sure that the purpose of your DAO is clear. Myself coming from both a public service, a large enterprise, and a startup background, I would say the worst thing that can possibly happen in any situation is to over-regulate and overcomplicate something that should be simple. So make sure you're using a DAO for the right person, or for the right reasons. If you are going to handle money, or you're going to do something with a real impact on the world where someone out there might not be happy that you're doing it, whether that is a government or an individual, you should probably consult a lawyer. You can check out our first masterclass in the series, in the DAO series specifically on this topic. But there are risks to being part of a DAO. There are certain jurisdictions where the individual members, regardless of their voting shares, might be collectively considered responsible for the actions of the DAO. So it's really important to get that right. You need to, as a DAO, once you've formed that initial community, you need to make sure that the right people are members of your DAO, depending on the purpose you're trying to start. And remember what we said from the beginning, that a DAO ultimately doesn't have to be an all or nothing thing. It can evolve over time. It can delegate certain functions that aren't suited to it. And it can also kind of split and reform and assign people whose expertise might be more appropriate for particular tasks. Community is where most DAOs thrive or fail. So you need to somehow keep them engaged. And again, by me saying you need to keep them engaged, that's already a misnomer, right? Because there is no you in a DAO usually, unless the founding team is very involved. There should be some sort of systematic way that incentivizes people to engage with the community and keep the community engaged back. So again, I think the important part is to set up something that is going to be flexible and be able to evolve in those directions and be able to adapt to new changes, right? Maybe X is going to be the main channel for communication today, maybe a Discord tomorrow, maybe it will be Farcaster in the future. But regardless, your DAO should have the mechanisms to be able to adapt. And then finally, I would anticipate, if I was putting a DAO together, I would anticipate the tasks that maybe the DAO as a whole would not be able to accomplish. And then I would go about having a network of partners and service providers to implement the decisions that you vote on. Because if a DAO doesn't end up doing something, if it doesn't fulfill a purpose, then you're really just putting a very high cost system in place to do something that isn't worth it. And that's where we're getting to case study number 4, and this one is kind of interesting. Because there have been some mistakes, and actually I heard about a different one also lately that I'll talk about. But ultimately, this was a failure in setup. And it wasn't a question of money, and it wasn't a question of people didn't understand what was going on. It was the initial setup that really sunk this initiative. So MCC DAO managed crypto capital. It was a successful and celebrated DAO that provided tooling and management for Ethereum DAOs in early 2018. And they raised over $44 million through private sales and an ICO. So, I mean, think about all the things that you could probably accomplish as an individual or as a close-knit group of friends, or even as a traditional business with $44 million. Essentially, they made 3 mistakes. Because the stakes were high and because they were very idealistic, they made the governance requirements to participate in a decisions very high. So the quorum, the number of votes that you had to have in any particular decision, was very high. Their user experience, so the interface by which you made decisions and their processes were very complicated, which meant that a lot of the retail users chose not to participate even if they were members, which in combination with the high participation requirements basically deadlocked the DAO. And then the third thing is they didn't anticipate how large accounts could maliciously gridlock the governance. So there were some very powerful large accounts that were involved in the governance of MCC DAO, what we call whales. And when the DAO as a whole realized that the rules that they had set and the systems that they had in place were going to cause the destruction, the ultimate destruction of the DAO, they tried to change it, right? They wanted to, they were smart people, they wanted to change it, but they couldn't because that would have been to the detriment of the really large accounts. And so the really large accounts blocked any decision that was not to their advantage. So it would be like, imagine you're sitting on the captain's chair of the Titanic. You have half the crew that wants to go left. You have half the crew that wants to go right. You're in a DAO, so you need a clear majority, especially with the way they set up the governance, and therefore you don't turn and you ram straight into the iceberg. And that is essentially what happened to MCC DAO. And so even though they were well known and even though they were on a very popular platform, they went from 44 million in their treasury to stopping their operations due to lack of capital and lack of investor confidence and just general exhaustion within the space of a year. And so I think it actually goes back to one of the things that we used to say when I worked in coffee. Sometimes the best way to make a small fortune is to start with a big fortune. And in this situation, MCC DAO, because they hadn't thought through what is my purpose, how am I going to set up governance, how am I going to make sure I navigate the processes, how am I going to make it easy and incentivize participation, how am I going to deal with kind of malicious actors. Because they didn't set up beforehand, the DAO with its $44 million treasury failed. I had another example I read about recently, although it didn't happen recently. But it was with the foundation of a different DAO. And essentially what happened was that the treasury was governed by the community as a whole, and let's say it had about 300 million in it. And the key members of the foundation decided that they were going to liquidate the treasury and distribute the value locked to the people who own tokens. Now, this would have massively benefited them. Let's say, again, 300 million in the treasury, very small foundation. Half of it would have gone to them and half of it would have gone to the rest of the community with some inefficiencies in that. And so they were going to unilaterally do this. But because it was a DAO, the community not only vetoed that decision, but they actually put to a vote and passed a decision to allocate $300,000 for the DAO to sue the founders and stop them from doing the negative thing that they were doing. So under the circumstances, yes, it's unfortunate that there was this attempt to take money away from the purpose of the foundation, and it's unfortunate that there was this disagreement, but you can see how all the right things were in place, right? People who were incentivized and had a reason to participate in the DAO participated. They delegated the fast actions, right? The hawk and mouse situation to a law firm to go after the founders for trying to scam them. And the DAO was able to adapt to that situation. Just a quick word about us. We are a consulting and advisory firm called Storm Partners. specialized in Web3 and advising Web3 companies, and particularly we work with ecosystems, just like we are doing through the Catalyst program. I think overall our goal is to kind of spur and drive ecosystem growth across several ecosystems, of which we think Cardano is a great one. And so what we're doing as part of this is we're providing education on DAOs in order to enable more DAOs to form on Cardano, which will increase the community and make them more and better DAOs that will survive and be useful to their members. If you have any questions for us, please do ask. Always happy to engage with the Cardano community, of which we are a part, and happy to answer questions before the end of this call if you have any. Okay. Well, listen, thanks so much for attending. We hope it was useful for you. And again, we will put all these lessons online on our YouTube channel, which is Decentral, DECENTRAL, House, HOUSE. And thanks so much for taking the time with us today.